So,
Morning.
good morning, Adele, Keeley. So we got together last March and started to talk about COVID, didn't we, and how it was impacting on our services and on us as leaders. And now we're back together again, some 15 months down the line. It's been a really difficult journey. So, what's that journey been like for you as a leader and for your services, and where are you now?
So I think it's been a really interesting journey, and I always, I know, look on the kind of positive lens, but there's been some real learning nuggets, I think, for us as a division and also me as a leader. And I'll talk probably about my lived experience as a leader in the first instance. So I'm not going to lie, it's probably been one of the most complex journeys I've ever been through, at a point where I started a secondment in Acting Up only 4 weeks before the pandemic started. And at first, when it first opened, I suppose a great thanks to my team, really, who put a red flag out to me very early days around. I went on to a bit of a heroic moment of feeling I needed to do everything for everybody, and I suppose I lost myself in that. And thanks to my team who knew me and put a red flag to say, hang on, Keeley, you need to look after yourself, because at that moment I was driving myself and not really thinking about me within it. And since then, I will say, it's not been without its wobbles either, and there has been times where I've wobbled and think, oh gosh, I can't do this anymore, and the intensity of the response and what was required from us really probably pushed me to have those wobbles. But what I would say is, what a fantastic team of support and that social network from my team around me. I was allowed to have those wobbles with my team, and they safety netted me. And likewise to you, Chris and Adele, I've always known that you're on the end of a Microsoft team call for me, and you've been a great support to me in my moments where I do need to just offload and debrief, really. So I won't say that my lived experience is all full of rose-tinted glasses, and I think it has taught me something. But the most critical learning that it's taught myself is I needed to look after myself first, so I could enable myself to look after my team and be the best version of myself to the team. But I've learned to understand that you can't do everything overnight, and it's about those, I call it, and my team will know this, the slices of cake today, and we'll eventually get to deliver the whole cake. But what's important this week versus, and doing that balance risk, really. But I'm so in awe of my team that have supported me through it and enabled me to feel comfortability in sharing my vulnerabilities, really.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a different challenge now, isn't it? Back last March, if you remember, we had all the different conflicting guidance, didn't we? And availability of PPE, and there was lots of worry, lots of anxiety. And I guess, you know, as a leader, you pick up on that and you share that anxiety. And then as we've gone through it, we've had outbreaks in some of our, you know, different clinical areas. That's been really challenging, giving people the right sort of kind of assurance and, you know, trying to make people feel safe and do the right thing. But, you know, on top of that, just a massive amount of transformation work in our services. So, you know, the staff are actually saying they're exhausted, and it's not a surprise, really. And I guess for me, it's difficult because you want to do what you can to help, and sometimes you do feel a bit powerless. So we're doing all the road shows and the well-being stuff, and that's the right thing to do. But I think a lot of the problems are caused by the fact that sometimes we just can't recruit people. So where people are working in really, really stretched services, and they've had COVID and all the trauma from that, and, you know, their own personal experiences as well, and how do you support them? And that's where I struggle sometimes, really. You know, just want to do the right thing and don't always know the answer. And I guess as a leader, you want to know the answer, don't you? Because you want to do the right thing. So I mean, that's where I've struggled a little bit more recently, just trying to get the balance actually of, you know, keeping on with business as usual, getting the transformation done, managing COVID. It is a massive ask of everyone. So it is a balancing act, and it's difficult.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been a complex journey, really. We're having obviously high secure, and we have to, within high secure, we've been working with the other two high secures, but then trying to manage the division which have got obviously medium secure, low secure, and then community services. I think I found it much better that we had a consistent meeting twice a week with the division, and we made sure this time that everybody were doing the same thing. If there was any questions asked which I couldn't answer, which during this, it people were looking to me to give the answers around, what they could and couldn't do, and I hadn't got them answers because, I don't think anybody else had them answers. It was all new to us, but people are looking to you as the leader especially during these meetings. They're collecting the questions up and asking me answers as if I know everything about COVID, which was very difficult to be able to say. We have to hold on. We've got to go to ICT, and then come back a week later and to do that. So I think we did a roadmap. Well, we've got a roadmap, which when the government set out their roadmap, we followed that and put that into the practice of our services and how that would reflect in our services, which has been better. I think the difficulty for me as well is all the questions we got from patients. I got letters after letters after letters from across the division about things they would like to do, and if it didn't sort of meet what they were doing in the general population, and explaining why, because obviously they're living in houses of 10s to 20s, that would take a whole house down or a whole ward down, which was really difficult to explain to them. So I think it's really affected us patients, which I found really difficult. And it's how we support our patients through that as well, because our staff are exhausted. I think they did absolutely brilliant. We had general sickness was quite low because people were coming to work. Now we're seeing a completely different picture. People are not going off with COVID; they're going off with general sickness because I think they're exhausted. But we've got through it. I think it's been a lessons learned. I don't think anything slowed down this time for us as leaders. I think like Chris said, your transformation carried on. All our stuff carried on. We were still doing loads of stuff around our governance and stuff like that. So that's what I found difficult, is trying to balance that as well as COVID and doing all the stuff. MS Teams has been fantastic, but it's also, for me, been a real hindrance because I've not had time to breathe. I've gone from meeting to meeting to meeting, and then you're doing your stuff later. However, it has been a blessing, hasn't it, where we've been able to do those stuff and move forward. I think as a trust we've done a really good job of us all getting together in ICT and making those decisions, which has been helpful, because at least you've got that bit of reassurance that if you're making a decision and it goes wrong, then you've gone through the trust, and we're all in it together.
Yeah, the Microsoft Teams is a blessing in many ways, but I can imagine it cheeses off people who work under me, because I'm constantly, when I want to talk to someone, looking at the status, and as soon as it gets green, I call them. They're not having much rest in between meetings when they're on red, so I suppose that really cheeses them off. But you just want to talk to somebody. It's really convenient, isn't it? Just press it button.
And I think that's really interesting, Chris, that you mentioned that, because we've had those discussions in our kind of recuperation conversations, and I think there's also some anticipated anxiety around, actually we've become more productive. What I'm hearing from individuals, they become more productive because they're not travelling about here, there and everywhere. But if life does go back to some face-to-face return, then they're worried around actually not being as productive as they have, and that emotional burden that they feel it within that. And Adele, picking up on your point around that lived experience from your patients, I've been really touched by the lived experience of our staff, and it's been some of the most powerful stories that around how do we value that personalised approach. And I appreciate there's some staff still in response mode and not quite ready to reflect and think what it's meant for them, and how you time that recuperation for them so it makes a good recuperation. But some are already a long way down that recuperation journey, and how are we going to manage a good recuperation for all in such a personalised way when there's such a diverse lived experience, because not only have we got as work life lived experience of dealing with the pandemic, we've got as home life, and how much does that complicate? And I think it's taught me never assume anything, because you can assume a lot of things, but that's coming from my bias, and it's really opening those conversations to hear about everyone's lived experience and how do we hear from everybody to make that good recuperation.
I guess it's just really important now, isn't it, that we really do listen to what people are telling us and try and help with the well-being stuff. You know, we do all the road shows and the champions and, you know, everything, you know, that we can think of really, but we need to respond what people are telling us. I think one of the biggest challenges actually is workforce, where we've got so many vacancies.
Yeah.
You know, we trying different ways to recruit and get people in, and especially with the growth in some of our services, it's really difficult. But you know, with all the other wellbeing stuff, I think that will help. If you're in a fully staffed environment,
we're providing all this recuperation support of wellbeing, but some of our services are unable to access that as much as we would like them to. But we, as a leaders, you know, we'll support what we can, obviously, and we'll keep going. And it's good that we've got each other to bounce off, I suppose. So thank you.
No, thank you, Adele and Chris, for all the support that you give to me. You've helped me immensely to get through the response, and just knowing that you're on end of a phone call away for when I have me wobbles, it's greatly appreciated.
just press it when it's green.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.